It's Community Outreach on Interactive, AM 1530 WDJZ. This is Connecticut's Love and Inspiration Station. And this morning on Community Outreach, we have lots to share with you. And, of course, we're talking about empowerment. And joining me this morning is Bianca Williams. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Edwards. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. And you're here to talk with us a little bit about empowerment within self-development and growth. And, of course, you come to us as the president and senior consultant of VCL.
Yes, VCL Consulting
And
Group.
VCL is what? What the acronym stands for?
It actually stands for Victorious Christian Living.
Okay, Victorious Christian Living. So we see where we're going with this in terms of the focus. It's a sort of a spiritual journey?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Now, primarily talking about a special event which will be taking place next week, Thursday, May 8th. And this will be taking place from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m., giving our listeners an opportunity to come and get some empowerment aspects of things that you have developed.
Yes.
Through your principles.
Through spiritual principles.
Yeah, through spiritual principles. Talk to us a little bit about the event next week. So, first of all, where it will be held and all the various details that our listeners may need to know about it.
Well, we are really excited because this is the first public training seminar that we'll be bringing to the Bridgeport area. Okay. And so the seminar is entitled Identifying Your Areas of Influence, and it will be held on Thursday, May 8th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. at 333 State Street. This is going to be at the Greater New England Minority Supplier Development Council conference room, located right next to Housatonic Community College.
Okay. Is the director, Mr. Fred McKinney, does he have anything to do with this?
He doesn't have anything to do with this training directly, but we do work together.
Oh, I see. Now, the idea of seeing a need in our communities for identifying these areas of development and growth. Talk to us a little bit about it. You talk about 4 principles.
Yes.
Do you care to name the 4 principles?
Sure. So the first principle that we are going to be talking about on today, when you join us on Thursday, May 8th, is going to be this: perfect leadership in the home and demonstrate leadership in public. Perfect it at home and demonstrate it in public. So here is what I find. I have over 20 years of experience as it relates to leadership and community development. And what we often see is public success but private failures. And we've got to be able to turn that around. And attending this seminar is going to help us to really reflect how our families see us, both immediate families as well as extended families.
And the community as a whole.
And the community as a whole.
Some people, though, who might say, for instance, okay, I don't see myself as a leader. In that context, how would you respond to that refrain?
And I'm so glad you asked that question, because that's exactly why I didn't include leadership in this title. But influence is absolutely leadership.
Okay.
So when we have the ability to model good behavior, to model positive principles, to act in a way that other people want to follow, that is, in fact, leadership. So many people have this skill and gift and don't realize that they have it, hence the title, Identifying Your Areas of Influence.
Now, in terms of identifying areas of influence, let's look at it in terms of the family unit for a second and see there are certain things that families may find themselves. Some people call it a generational curse, whatever the issue may be, whatever it is. And it would seem to me that there's no real conscious effort on the part of the family to try to break that scenario, to break away from it, to move on a different path. Is there a value extracted from what you're doing that is going to help people who find themselves with those challenges to move from it?
Absolutely. So I'm from back in the day.
Okay.
And when we came home from church, our father sat us down with our mother and my sibling, and we had a conversation, and we had dinner together, and we communicated. And that's one of the greatest principles as it relates to bringing the family back on track is communication. Practicing good communication. How do we negotiate? How do we go about making decisions? These are all things that we learn from our family growing up. And hopefully when we become adults, we transition that information to our family. And I think that's where the gap has come. I love technology. In fact, I hold on to my iPad quite frequently.
Right.
But technology has created a gap for us as it relates to effective communication, as it relates to our families.
How so?
Well, it was funny because when I came in, one of your producers caught me texting, and we had this conversation about how texting has stopped us from verbally communicating, how email has stopped us from verbally communicating. The art of face-to-face, where you can see the emotions and feel the passion, is quickly dwindling away.
Let's look at this in the concept of the larger community in terms of how this kind of seminar, again, this seminar will be taking place next week, Thursday at 333 State Street, downtown Bridgeport. And of course, our guest in the studio is Kim Bianca Williams. And she, of course, will be hosting this seminar, Identifying Your Areas of Influence. Now, let's look at it in the context of the larger community, because we all interact with each other on different levels, whether it is on personal or business, whatever it is, in social interaction. And you mentioned a while ago the issue of technology.
Yes.
What is it that is going to force us to recognize that within ourselves, from your point of view, to see that there is a lack of personal interaction? Because I get the sense that many people may resist it because that's what they know. So they come to a place where you challenge them and say, well, you need to interact with each other more directly. It has to be more organic. You have to be more connected with each other, and so on and so forth. And people can't see the need and the value for it. How do you counteract that?
That's where mentoring comes in. Mentoring, when we look at mentoring, it is the wise teaching the younger the skills and the values that they have that have made them successful along with their family's success. Mentoring is a vital aspect in our community. We've done it on a very organic level when we used to go down the street and mom and them was sitting on the porch, and if they saw us misbehaving or acting out,
it takes a village.
They had the ability to correct us. They had the ability to challenge us. We don't see that anymore. In the churches, mentoring was huge. It was called discipleship.
Right.
And we are fading away from that in our churches. We're even segregating because we send our children to children's church and we allow the adults to stay in the main sanctuary. So we've got to find a way where we bring the family unit back together, because it's going to be the strong family that creates the strong community.
And to that point, because we talk about how we break ourselves down in the society in terms of where we find ourselves. And some people say, for instance, you have the baby boom generations, and of course they have Generation X, and now you have the millennium youngsters. Now let's look at the millennium youngsters, and this is what they know. This is the world that they were born into. They don't know, they may not know or be aware of the other facets of life. And so to reach them, I think it will take an additional effort. How do you see that?
We have to sit down and have conversations with them, one-on-one conversations. And so if they enjoy a specific activity, we'll cut a deal with them. I'll come to your activity, you come to mine. But we have to have this conversation. We have to open up this level of dialogue. I have the ability to do a portion of that because I'm an instructor at Housatonic Community College.
I see.
So I see youngsters coming in all of the time.
Okay.
And initially, they're a little taken aback. And by the end of the semester, we've developed such a great relationship that we can sit down, putting technology aside, putting their particular thoughts and opinions aside, and giving me the opportunity to really share some wisdom and insight with them. And remarkably, a large portion of them are very receptive.
Wonderful. And in other words, there is always hope.
There is absolutely always hope.
In the context of what we're talking about here. We're talking about a special seminar which will be taking place next week, Thursday, the 8th of May at 6:30 p.m. at 333 State Street, downtown Bridgeport, Identifying Your Areas of Influence. And you said that that's something that you wanted to do for the community. But let's talk a little bit more about the organization, Victorious Christian Living. How did that come to be?
Well, I've lived in Georgia for over 20 years and recently moved back to the Northeast about 3 years ago. And I had a great aspiration of building a nonprofit organization right in the heart of an urban community.
Okay.
Because I had incredible corporate experience and background in training and development. And I wanted to be able to bring that back to my community so they can draw strength from that. Great idea, no funding.
Okay.
So I created the corporate arm, which is VCL Consulting Group, with the goal of creating a funding stream so that I can operate this nonprofit.
Okay. Now, to the large extent of what you're doing here, obviously it has a galvanizing effect in terms of bringing people to another level of knowing themselves and understanding themselves through the process with the 4 principles that you'll be dealing with at the seminar and other facets of life. Let's look at it beyond the scope of the actual seminar itself in terms of the takeaway. After the seminar, what happens? What happens in terms of where does one find oneself in terms of moving forward now? You may have energized something within an individual and they want to continue. How does that support mechanism, if there's such a thing, continue after the seminar, after the 2 hours?
Well, there is such a thing. And part of what our organization, VCL Consulting Group, offers is personal one-on-one coaching.
Okay.
So we will absolutely be available and willing to assist them in furthering their goals. But the immediate takeaways that they will have once they leave the seminar is an action plan on how to really develop the influence that they have in those 4 key areas, which are in the home, in the workplace, your place of worship, and your community.
Let's go to your place of worship for a minute. And you touched on it a while ago in terms of the scenario you laid out with. You mentioned about the children actually in Sunday school.
Yes.
But no, let's look at the larger picture of the church, because I've said on these microphones before that it is in my view that the church is a pillar of the community.
Absolutely.
And therefore there are things that the church can have an influence in terms of the social sphere in different aspects of, in terms of empowerment, in terms of morality, in many facets of life. What is your message, say for instance, to the church now? Let's look at the word leadership deliberately in the context of that. What is your message directly to the church community in that regard, in terms of providing these kinds of diversities for their congregations in the effort of growth and development?
I think one of the things we have to do as a larger church community is reevaluate our programming. Oftentimes when we go in to create or build a church, it's on our personal agendas, and we haven't actually had an opportunity to go into the community to find out what their needs are. So we may be delivering programs that are not necessarily essential to that community. So the first thing that I would say is take an opportunity and provide a scope of what it is that the community needs. And then amongst the leadership, develop specific programming that's going to be advantageous to that community.
I will have to ask you this, though, in terms of your walk in this path, have you actually been able to address the church community in this regard? And if so, what has their receptivity of this been like?
I have not, and I am working on that.
Okay.
Actually, that is going to be part of my dissertation.
Okay.
And my dissertation is entitled Governance in the Black Church. And when you talk about governance, it's how you lead the organization and how you evaluate the organization and the programmings that it's rendering and the level of accountability that is necessary to ensure we're accomplishing the mission. So I do expect some pushback because it is going to be addressing leadership practices. However, I believe that in the development of relationships and clearly articulating what the purpose is, which ultimately will be to empower the community, I will be received.
Wonderful. And of course, we're talking about Victorious Christian Living.
Yes.
Of course, and that's the name of the organization. We're talking to the president, and her name is Kim Bianca Williams this morning. Don't forget, folks, there's going to be a seminar which will take place next week, Thursday, the 8th of May, from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m., and this will be at 333 State Street, downtown Bridgeport.